Hey guys, we have a fun podcast today, an interview with Roy Shvartzapel, who was in our studios in 2019 in New York. I think that he has worked for some of the greatest chefs of all time, from Pierre May, Thomas Keller, Ferran Adria, Albert Adria, Massari, the sort of the panettone monk, Alain Ducasse. The list goes on and on. Truly don't think anyone has a better CV than Roy, and he's dedicated his life to making this panettone that if you stay tuned to the very end of this podcast, we will give you a code. Suckers, you're going to have to listen, and you'll find out exactly how much when you buy one of these panettone that is a great Christmas present. And we're going to talk a little bit about like Pokemon. We're going to get into Roy. There's actually a connection between the two somehow, some way. And talk to you guys later. Let's go into the podcast. Welcome to the Dave Chang Show, part of the Ringer Podcast Network, presented by Major Dope Media. Thank you, Yola Tango, as always. I imbibed a little too much of a marijuana beverage yesterday.
There's a certain haze to your demeanor today.
Oh yeah, I've had a hard time writing emails this morning. One of my friends is working for a company that makes, joints, and now they're working into beverages, and they're like, try it. One is a lot, one is a little. One little bottle is mostly CBD with 20 milligrams. The other bottle was 100 milligrams. And I had the little bottle. I was like, oh, that's nice. Mostly CBD.
That's cute.
And I was trying to judge. 8 o'clock hits. Hugo goes down. And I'm like, I got to go to bed.
You eyeball dosed it.
I have the golden monkey in my hand.
God.
I'm like, 100 milligrams. There's not 10 sips. There's probably 4 sips in this sucker. So I got to take like a quarter
sip.
And I thought I took what was a quarter sip. Boy, I'm glad I only did a quarter of a sip, because what happens when, Dad, I fell out of my bunk bed. Oh, shit. I can't tell Grace. Like, Grace, we had to call an Uber because she's traveling right now. Like, and she's like, why? Because I was unable to drive. That certainly crossed my mind.
Wait, because you're like...
So I went to bed thinking like, God, I hope nothing happened. No, I never want anything to happen to my kids, but I was like, of all nights, not tonight.
Yeah. I've had that exact same thought where I'll just like, immediately after they go to bed, you're like, okay, it's time for an assisted sleep. And you're laying there and you're like, oh boy, if anything happens in the next 30 minutes, like, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah. I mean, there was no one to be like, hey, you want to drive? No, you drive. It was like, I got to drive.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hugo, you're driving, buddy.
I'm looking through the ride sharing apps like, do they have car seats installed?
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of good parenting, the dad segment is about Pokemon.
Oh.
And there are 2 things that I've been waiting to like not introduce to my kid. One is baseball. The other thing was Pokemon. I was like, I'm not, my kid will never.
Because you knew it's a rabbit hole.
But I didn't know what rabbit hole. I just like, he's not going to do it. That looks stupid. Pikachu. What? No. My son will never be saying Pikachu, Charizard.
And then
what? Again, no matter what you do, you might run your parental teachings as Kim Jong-un. But man, but once they leave, that's like they're able to walk across 38th parallel anytime they want.
Yeah.
When they go to school.
Yeah.
So there's no point in culturally preventing your kids from learning anything, because now they're on the sauce of Pokemon.
Oh yeah.
I don't even know how my son has books and plastic and cases now. When did that happen? And how is he learning to organize this?
Oh my God. Pikachu finds a way.
Golly.
So he's got the cards.
Yes. I didn't want to go to the store every time. I didn't know Pokemon can be like $6, $7 for an entry-level pack. I quickly did the math. I'm like, it's like we've bought like 10, 15 packs over like 3 months. Like,
yeah.
There's got to be economies of scale to buying the box. So I go into the local nerd shop, and I'm shocked to see like maybe 50 tables of grown men, and then kids that are barely older than my son.
Yeah.
Like, actually playing Pokemon as a game.
Yeah. Paying, by the way, to sit at a folding table. Like
I was
paying
like,
to sit
you know
there.
what I said to myself? I was like, not one of you motherfuckers is Bobby Fischer. I am. You're not, I mean, they were like playing with notes and everything. Like they were doing.
I walk into one of those stores though, and I'll be honest with you, I feel so at ease. I'm just like, nobody's judging me in here.
So I walk to the counter and I see, and there's all sorts of pricing. Somewhere like $300. I was like, no fucking way.
Mm-hmm.
For one, I was like, what's the next best thing? Stellar Crown launched 2024. I was like, I'll buy a whole box of that. I did the math. There's like 50 packs. It's $107. I was like, $5 cheaper basically than going per the store. Some of the stores. Like,
Worth it.
And then I showed my kids, look how many cars I bought. I'm now going to lord over you with these and bribe you for your behavior. I did not go over this with Grace. There was no, hey, this is how we parent together. I was like, I am going to bribe you to behave well.
I'm picturing you as the bad guy in Mad Max Fury Road with all the water.
What did I do? Right off the bat, when I brought it home, here, Hugo, here's 3.
Oh.
Right off the bat.
Oh.
I'm drug dealing to my son.
Oh, give him a little taste.
Yeah, give him a taste. And then cut it off right off the bat, right away. Can I have a nope? No.
That is true drug dealer.
No. No, you have to do this. You have to behave like this. You got to execute this. You got to finish your dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but I finished my dinner. I didn't say just this dinner, Hugo. Like,
oh my God.
No. Anyway, so his friend was over the other day, and they were having a Pokemon thing, right? Whatever it was, casting spells.
I'm sorry, Pokemon? Is that what you said?
Pokemon, whatever. Anyway, they do their thing. They clean up their fort. They're being well-behaved little boys. And they're like, hey, you promised us Pokemon. I was like, you're right, I did. You guys did such a great job. Here are 2 packs. And then, they're like, we can't open it up. Can you open it up for us? And I give to Hugo's friend. I open it up and I go through the cards. And I'm like, this is the first pack I've ever opened, by the way. Immediately, I'm like, yeah, that card immediately looks like I found something special. We're talking to a 6-year-old now. And I'm like, his mom's not here. Dropped him off as play date. And I'm like, okay, I know that if I give this to you, you're going to destroy it. So should I give this to you at all? I was having this moral dilemma here. And then I quickly was like, hey, let me look at the card online. And it's the Terragos X, whatever, number 1. But if you look at it, it immediately says, this is the number 1 card you want.
Oh, in this series of cards. Okay.
Like $150.
Okay.
Number 1 card. And I'm like, fine. Then I give him the card and he's like, can I have my cards? I'm like, can you?
Did you were considering slipping that one out?
Oh, I was definitely considering stealing the card and not giving it to him, like doing a one-handed card trick. Not because of me stealing it, because I'm like, he's going to ruin this thing.
Right. It's like, you're in your mind, you're like, am I just going to give this child a $100 bill to play with?
Exactly.
Just like, am I just going to give it to you to just?
But it's not just a $100 bill. This could be like $10,000 in a couple of years.
It's a little investment.
It'd be irresponsible for me just to give it to you. Because so you know what I did? I was like, fuck it. I'll give it to you. I know what's going to happen. What does this fucking kid do? Straight into his fucking pocket.
Whereas you were like, this needs to get
PSA fucking tested right now. Okay?
You need to put on your gloves.
And this guy, this little kid is like, I don't give a fuck. Straight into his pocket.
I have had this exact argument with my wife where like the kids open them and like you'll every now and then you get like a card. You're like, I don't know what that is. It looks like it's worth some money. And then I'm like, hey, wait, don't put that, like, put that in a plastic. And they're just like, no, I don't want to. Put it in a plastic case. I don't want to. And my wife is like, just let the kids play with their cards. And I'm like,
it's irresponsible of us to.
It's irresponsible.
Yeah.
It's not.
I found a certificate for Apple stock that was signed anonymously to anybody.
Just give it to the kids.
Yeah.
Let them color on it.
So I'm friends with the kid's dad. So I sent him a text with a link to the Terragos X, the card. And I said, hey, bud, check your son's pocket. And he's like, dude, it's the number one card. I was like, I know. I thought you'd enjoy it, buddy.
So what are you going to do?
So now I have like 45 cards left. I've only gotten 3.
Uh-huh.
2. No. I gave 2 again this weekend. So 43
remaining packs.
43. I can do the math. Can I do the math? Yes, 43.
And you're
43 left.
You're just going to open them all by yourself.
Can I tell you the truth? In my car, there are 2 packs that I've already opened. And of course, here's the problem. What I didn't know, I'm an addict. I have a highly addictive personality, particularly to gambling, where they hand out free money in places like casinos, like Las Vegas. You just hand out free money. You just have to be there at the right time with the right combination of cards or the right combination of dice, right?
I have never heard gambling described in that way.
It's free.
You just have to be there at the right time
with the right amount of money to backstop your bet. Okay? And if it happens to be the right combination, the right pattern, teaches pattern recognition, you win free money. Okay?
Okay.
Anyway, I didn't realize that. I was like,
oh,
this is gambling.
It's just a little gamble.
But it's also like bingo. It's very passive. It's also I love this. I love it. And I didn't realize I could get this fucking dopamine high off of opening up a pack of fucking cards.
They fully know that you're getting that dopamine high because I think with all cards, baseball, any collectibles, it's always like the most valuable are at the back of the little pack.
I didn't know that until now.
So people are sliding
I literally
through.
didn't know that because after these 2 packs, I'm going to open up a 3rd after this. I didn't realize that I was like, I bet you, why is all the good cards at the end of the pack? I'm learning all these things. I didn't even know. That's what I've now realized is I can now share this journey that my son is on, be equally excited about the gambling prospect of Pokemon. And now I'm pro Pokemon because it teaches math, gambling, teaches deal making. I was like, shit, this is awesome. It teaches supply and demand. I'm like now pro Pokemon 100%. This podcast might just become a Pokemon channel altogether.
Can I admit to you, I also keep a stash of cards for good behavior. This is because Dave and I have not talked about this.
This is all new.
I have a stash as well that I dole out for good behavior. And I went up one day and I was like, oh, I got to get them a pack. They were like doing this, whatever. And I was like, where the fuck did all my Pokemon packs go? Exactly like a drug addict. I was like, oh, I opened a bunch of them by myself. I dipped into my stash.
I just want you to know, parents, if you open it up, you're not doing anything wrong. Okay? The fact is this, you're doing it out of love.
Yep.
To protect the investment of your child.
Yep. That's exactly right.
Who knows? You could pull a it's like a lot of tickets. Like, oh, I'm going to scratch it for you, okay? So no, I don't think it's a moral problem to open up your kid's Pokemon. I think it's okay. I just wanted to put that out there. I'm also bringing my gem scale from work because now I'm going to start weighing all that shit and be like, hey, Hugo, you definitely open these.
Just not this one. This one's a little heavy.
Yeah, this one's a little heavy.
This one's 0.1 grams heavier than this one. I think that's
why do you have a gem scale? Don't worry about it. Anyway, no, I'm learning about the world of Pokemon. But all jokes aside, it's very exciting. All right, let's take a break. We're going to get an interview with Roy Shvartzapel of This Is Roy. And maybe we'll talk about, maybe our new segment is Charizard Corner.
Charizard.
Charizard. Back in 2019, it was 2019, I thought it was 2020, we had Roy Shvartzapel on the podcast. It was one of my favorite ones we recorded back pre-pandemic era when the world was a very different place. The restaurant world was a different place. A lot of things have changed, but one of the things that have not changed is the commitment to quality and excellence and deliciousness of Roy and his company. This is Roy.
This is from
Roy, excuse me. Because I just think of you as a state of being.
It's just Roy.
For those that know me, this is like the gift that I give out to people. If you haven't gotten one, it's because I give you the.
As a century, you're announcing that like this is every holiday season.
And you should listen to that pod because it was something that, again, has, the world has changed, but I don't think you're going to find somebody that has worked at the kitchens and mentor and learned from the great mentors of the past sort of 50 plus years in the business. I could think of maybe a couple people that might have had a better CV, but the work ethic and the ability to sort of master sort of the culinary arts from a variety of angles, and then the focus on really one thing and to do it better than just about anything else. It's a rarity. I have friends that make great panettone. Always gets me in trouble. All right. But
they're my friends too.
Yeah, they're your friends too. And I love eating it, but there's something different about what Roy does, because it's the one thing that you can get, and it's nothing easy about scale, but you can buy, right?
Sure.
You can buy, and the reason I love it as a gift is it never disappoints. It's one of those things that's a rarity. Most people assume panettone is going to be not good. It's like a fruit cake. It's terrible. It looks like nuclear colored fruits or whatever.
Yeah, it's like
those are absolutely terrible. Mm-hmm. No question about it. But I think that what Roy does, again, and a commitment to excellence and quality and deliciousness, and is hard to match at being able to buy it at scale, right? And I don't think you can say that much about food, where it's a guarantee. If somebody doesn't like it, something's wrong with them. You spent years, again, mastering. People always say, is panettone easy, or is it considered one of the hardest things to actually make?
I could make a pretty explicit argument that it is the hardest in the world of baking and pastry. And I think it's pretty universally agreed upon by most pastry chefs and bakers, certainly those that have attempted it, right? If there's an exception, the likelihood that they actually haven't done it and therefore they think something else is more difficult is probably true.
Have you noticed that there is a growing amount of chefs that are trying to make their own panettone? Because it is
explosive.
Of these things.
Explosive. I
get in a friendly debate with some of them, as our mutual friends they are. And I'm like, great. Oh, yes, this is amazing what you just made. But you just made 2. It's amazing what you just made. You just did 4. Mm-hmm. And it's once a year. I always say, hey, if this is like a pickup one-on-one game, because we used to be a pro in basketball, I was like, why don't you challenge Roy to one? If he had to just make one panettone versus your one panettone, what do you think would happen? Right. It never elicits a fun response that I want.
Right. No, sure. And it's hard. It is difficult to explain that it's not something that scales in a linear fashion. It doesn't, right? Making 6 at home, right? I mean, the resemblance to making 800 and needing per day and needing to do that every single day without any room for error. It's just it's not a better or worse sort of thing. I'm right, you're wrong. That's not the conversation. The conversation is we're playing 2 different games, right? Okay, at its core, yes, you're making the same product, but the way I like to explain it to people is with a product line that they could probably wrap their heads around. Making cookies at home is not like producing cookies to ship all over the United States if you're Levan Bakery, right? It's not the same, right? And when you put it in terms of a product that people might be able to wrap their heads around, they're like, oh, so then take the degree of difficulty in making a cookie, multiply that by about 1,000, and then couple it with it doesn't scale in a linear fashion.
So for people who don't know who've never made a panettone or even eaten one, like what do you mean this is the most difficult single item to make in the pastry can? What makes it so difficult?
So we can start with kind of top level down, right? If anyone has kind of delved in a little bit to anything related to working with commercial yeast, right? There's an element of know-how and understanding with how that product works, right? Now, as difficult as someone might think that little package that you open and, right, once you can grasp what's going on, it's fairly predictable, right? Like it's going to behave the way it behaves, assuming the external parameters that you put forth maintain.
The recipe says 1 packet of yeast will
For this,
do the job
you
for
know,
this.
as long as your home isn't 90 degrees or 50 degrees, right? You can get to a point rather quickly where some level of consistency can happen. We're now working in a space where you're working with a wild yeast, which is a different animal altogether. This is something that has a life of its own, feelings of its own, behavioral patterns of its own. And the goal is to, as the craftsperson, is to get to a point where you are dictating how it behaves. I like to say it's like parenting, right? We like to think, you know, before we become parents, so like, oh, I'm going to be this kind of, and I'm going to do this, and you see other parents, right? And then you have kids, and you're like,
I don't know what you're talking about,
right? And then there are days where you feel like, man, I nailed this today, right? And then the next morning, everything was the same, except your kids wake up and you're like, what just happened, right? And so in the baking world, working with a wild yeast is similar to that. Now in panettone, right, it's not just that you're working with wild yeast. Now you're working with an enriched dough, right? Enriched meaning you have the addition of fats and sugars in ratios that make no sense, right? If you're making a lean dough, when I say lean, I mean the absence of sugar and fat, like a baguette, right? It's much more straightforward. I'm not saying it's simple, but it's much more straightforward because you're not dealing with emulsions, right? Here, you're not only dealing with a wild yeast, you're not only dealing with a 40, 50-hour process, right? Before you can even see if what you did, you know, is gonna be okay. You're then dealing with a particular type of mixing because you have so much fat and so much sugar coupled with the water and the inclusions, and you're hanging upside down and like just the gamut of possibilities of things to go wrong. And it's a domino effect, meaning if we talk about a croissant or a baguette or something like that, sure, there's multi components that need to go well. But if one of them doesn't go as well as you would hope, it doesn't necessarily mean the whole house comes crashing down. With panettone, if one little piece is off, the house comes crashing down every single time. And then it's not a quick fix, right? You got to start all over again, right? So it's not for the faint of heart.
As you were describing this, trying to give a comp to people that are like, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, you know, I make great panettone, and I'm not even talking about people that, because we're seeing it more and more, people that were, you know, in a previous life, not in the industry, and then I'm a good cook, I'm going to open up a restaurant because everyone wants to open up a restaurant more than ever these days. I think randomly, because I see Chris, he loves playing golf these days, if you can make great baked goods in your home, that's the equivalent of being a driving range pro. You know, it's like,
That's fair.
You can do it, and you can do it extremely well without any pressure.
Yeah.
Without,
Yes.
you know, competition per se.
I think you're being generous with the driving range.
Just
pro.
driving range.
No, it's
amateur.
The comp was like, oh, I hit a 275-yard drive on the driving range one time. Like I'm a pro. Versus like, oh, can you do that on the regular? Like in a tournament, 72 times.
It reminds me of a lot of the YouTube and kind of reels I'm seeing about guys that are very good at basketball at LA Fitness 24. No, and I'm not saying they are good basketball players. There's good basketball players at 24-hour fitness, and then there's that moment where they encounter a guy that played in the league for 15 years, and they think he's old because he retired 12 years ago, and they play for fun, and he's in jeans and shoes that don't belong on a bed, and they realize, oh, there's levels to this.
And it's one of my favorite stories when, you know, the ex-NBA player Brian Scalabrine always says that they always challenge him, like, dude, this out of shape
you
white
don't get
dude,
it.
There's no way he's going to be better than me. Like, I'm 22 years old. I can jump. I have 40-inch vertical, and he smokes everybody every time.
When people get paid to play a sport for a living, and they in fact had a career for a decade or more, the average Joe, even guys that are really into sports, unless you have felt that, you can't comprehend how good they really are.
Right.
Well, this is a perfect segue into where I want to talk about, because I think it's very telling for everything that you sort of cherish and embody in your career. We're talking about sports. We're talking about people that are very athletically talented in an amateur setting at the local gym. How do they know that they're not the best if they're always winning? How do you explain to a world that there's a level of quality and excellence that honestly, if I showed it to you, you wouldn't even understand.
I'll push back a little. I do think that as a baseline, most of it is attributed to, the cliche, you don't know what you don't know, right? And in my experience, and I used to be one of these people before I discovered a different level of quality of panettone. I was I was raised here. Panettone is that $6 thing at your local grocery store that we all wondered, like, who in the world buys this? Like, who can eat this stuff? Right? Now, I didn't know what I didn't know until it was presented to me when I was in Europe 20 years ago. It's like, oh my God, right? I may not be able to explain it. I may not be able to understand it. And I certainly couldn't make it. But there is an unequivocal conclusion on impact that this is different, right? I think it's no different than every now and again, back to the gym thing, the guy in the gym who thinks he's really good, no NBA guys have ever shown up to that gym. And on a particular day, there happens to be a guy that shows up and you like, I don't know where he played, but I know he's not like us, right? And so I do think when you're dealing with the disparity like that, where it's professional and very good weekend warrior, it's just painfully obvious that this is not the same.
Right. I think it's interesting because you know who buys those $6-7 panettones for years and years and years is my mom. Like she was always like, I didn't know. She knew what panettone was before me, but she knew it as that grocery store thing. And I was always just like, you're the only person in the entire world, I think, that is buying these and eating. I don't even know what these are, but she loves them. And I want to say this. There's no way she would have ever paid for your panettone.
Right.
Right. Because she's like, why am I going to pay?
Intrinsically, it's not, the value's not there.
No, totally.
I pay $7 for mine.
Yes.
Right. Why am I going to pay, way more for this one?
Yes.
When I brought one home and she tasted, like now every year she's like, where the fuck is where's the panettone? Like,
you don't love me anymore, son.
Like, where the hell is? No, honestly, like
and by the way, I get where she's coming from because the framing of that conversation is in the arena of commodity thinking. I get it. When we're talking about something in the world of commodities, yeah, I mean, if we're buying something that is like that, why would I pay $25? Now, what I do, granted, the name evokes commodity thinking to many in the West, right? And it just takes time to understand that while there is an enormous commodity market for this, I don't do that in the same way that there's a commodity market for jeans. Right. I can go find some jeans that are perfectly wearable for $12.
But could you make this with completely different ingredients? I won't say it's substandard, but still make it very, very delicious. Clearly, you could, but with substandard ingredients. That somebody that's never tasted it before, right?
Sure.
They've only had bad panettone.
Yeah, because I think if the comparison is that bad panettone, the bar is so very low that between where that is and where mine is there a middle ground? There definitely is a middle ground. And sure.
I think this is sort of what I feel is a scenario that's being played out. And if you can use the world of panettone as a vehicle to understand other things, it doesn't have to be just food, but as food becomes more, there's higher literacy in what good and bad is. The world at large is mostly familiar with just bad panettone.
Yes.
So the idea of what quality is, and we had the great Josh Keenes on talking about an audience that understands what true, perfect, it's close to perfect, platonic ideal of ingredients are. Because when you do, it's like, it's cooking's on a wholly different level. It's getting a perfect wave surfing or something like. You just feel like you're working things differently. Right. That is so few and far between in terms of getting and allocating those resources that the supply and demand is so fucking skewed, right? So it becomes this more elusive thing.
Yes.
What good is, whether it's a bottle of wine, something that has a limited amount to produce, reservation,
scarf,
right, whatever. That becomes so distorted because it's so clear the barbell effect. Okay, that we're being told is really good, but no one will ever taste that. No one will ever know.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I love judging the wine world right now, just like through a couple of vineyards. And I was like, Raveneau at a restaurant is like $1,400. Like, I was like, what? Whoa. That's like, it's astronomical. That used to be $200 2018 is now selling $1,200. That was already cost prohibitive for a younger audience to taste. Right. So now you have a great disparity in age and socioeconomic, who can taste and know what.
Right.
So I'm saying now you have let's just imagine a whole host of companies and competition that are creating panettone.
Yes.
Because you can't make it accessible for everyone to taste.
Right.
It's impossible. Somebody else will get a product out there immediately and it's 90% better than the panettone they've already had.
Yes.
And now that becomes the judgment, the standard of excellence.
So like I've introduced your panettone to lots and lots of people, family and friends. Some of those people that I have introduced this to, opened it, sliced it, given them taste, watched them marvel at it, been like, isn't this fucking crazy? In subsequent Christmases have brought me a different panettone and been like, hey, it's panettone, right? Panettone. And I'll open it and be like, what the fuck is this?
It's way better than what was before.
Way better than like grocery store.
Yep.
This is a more expensive product. They're really excited about it. Like this has actually happened to me on numerous occasions. And they're like, we're panettone friends now, right? And I'm just like, this is not what I gave you. What are you doing?
And Roy, I'd love your thoughts on this because I don't want to make the assumption that like that's a necessarily bad thing. I think it's not
negative either or
byproduct because right now you have people that are more panettone literate, right?
Sure.
But do they actually know what's good? They do know what the floor is and they know it's better than that $5 thing they can get at the supermarket. And they've heard about this your thing, and now there's a whole host of other pastry chefs that are not doing it. And all of a sudden, it sort of becomes like the sushi industry in Japan, where you can't just say one sushi spot's the best. There's a whole host that are pushing each other to be the best. But as a whole now, I feel like this created this distortion understanding of what good is because they now have an idea, data driven, like the panettone that I'm showing to you is better than this.
Right.
So they get credit, they get currency, they understand what good is, but it's only in theory that they're ever going to know that what they think is good is actually not good at all.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think that everyone would recognize, and I think this is how I like to point it out. We have a blueprint for how to tell this story, right? And it's almost in every arena of our lives. Let's assume that the only restaurants that people knew about were, I'm going to use a place card holder here, McDonald's, right? Let's assume that was everyone's reference point to what is a restaurant,
sure.
Right? I like to say that most of the Western world thinks that the version of panettone that they are aware of is the fast food, not very good version of it. Unbeknownst to them, there are other categories. Think about if you went from all I know about restaurants is McDonald's, and all of a sudden someone took you to the French Laundry, right? And they said, but this is also a restaurant. It's just different. And they are both technically restaurants, right? Now, between McDonald's and the French Laundry, if we're going to say like that sort of service and approach to sourcing ingredients and execution and plating and all the things is like the pinnacle of a restaurant experience. Great. Well, between McDonald's and the French Laundry, you've got places like Majordomo, Balthazar, Mozza, whatever, right? And those are very, very good restaurants, right? They're delicious and they're exponentially better than, the fast food alternatives that I was talking about. This is no different, right? There's always going to be that level that may not be accessible to everyone, but if the creation of said level then imparts, can we at least have a larger number of better options, even if they're not at the top, that are 7s, 8s, 6s, and not just a 1.
But are we in a place where culture is now judging a 6 or a 7 as a 9 or a 10, right?
It's possible because at the end of the day, right, it's all subjective, right? It's all subjective. I think the bigger question is whether your 6 is my 8 or my 8 is your 5. I think the bigger goal would be, can we just have a variety of options that are not a 1?
100%. But there's a discrepancy because of social media. You're able to broadcast that limited number of excellence, right?
Yes.
Whatever that is.
Right.
The Hermes, Birkin, whatever the fuck, right?
Yes.
The Porsche 911, whatever.
Yeah.
Because it's so rare and valuable, you can broadcast it to the world and everyone can consume it mentally to some degree.
Sure.
But the thing about food, unlike anything else, it rots or it's extremely ephemeral. Right. So there's this weird disconnect that happens, I think, specifically in food with what people think is really fucking good.
Totally.
And versus what they're able to get.
Right.
And I think that's actually fucking up our ability for an audience to even know what good is, because they're not supposed to know what good is.
Yeah, I don't even know if
that makes any sense.
If it, the idea that there might be a solution to there, social media is not going anywhere, right? And the ability to broadcast instantly to so many people is only going to get more intense and more efficient and more available to everyone. It's just going to be what it is. The reality is none of us are ever going to be able to, not that I'm interested in making enough to supply everyone, right? That's just not who I am or what I aspire to do. There's always going to be the people who like to come on and troll and say things that they don't have any knowledge base to make a comment about. And then there's going to be the people on the other side of this, right? There's always going to be that. Now, it used to exist independent of social media in a more concentrated way, but in real time, right? In like this face-to-face sort of scenario, and we were blind to the people that we couldn't see. But it doesn't mean they weren't thinking what is now being broadcast.
But I think what Dave's fear is, and I mean, like I share this as well, is like the threat is to you, is to the 10.
Oh,
the threat is to the 10. Yes. Right? Is if I'm on social media and I'm just like, guys, check this out. I made my panettone. Check it out. I'm ripping you off straight. I'm slicing my panettone down the middle and I'm cracking it open. And you and me and Dave can look at that and be like, 6. But they're just like, this is the best fucking panettone you've ever tasted. It's incredible. Yeah. Like this is, oh my God, it's airy. It's like eating a cloud, right? Like blah, blah, blah. That we think, I mean, I don't know how you feel, like feels to us like the existential threat to the 10, to you.
So people who know me intimately are, certainly would know what I'm about to say. And I think part of my wiring that's both a blessing and a curse is I just don't care about what, one of my favorite Kobe Bryant stories, and, he's, my spirit animal, right? Is, I don't know if you've seen the clip where a reporter is asking him if you could receive one compliment from any NBA players, which player would it be? And he turns and he looks at her and he's like, I don't really care about any of them, to be honest with you. Right? And it's not saying I don't respect them, right? It's saying that I don't navigate my life thinking about what someone who I'm never going to meet may or may not say. By the way, in either direction, right? Like I wake up every day and just try to do the best that I can do in the quest to become masterful at something, knowing there are going to be shitty days, there's going to be really good days, and there's going to be a bunch in between that no one cares about, right? And so to fixate like, oh, this person that has 10,000 followers said my panettone was a 8.2 and not a 9 point. Like,
right. I should rephrase that. I think the threat is more to me and Dave then, because the threat is really, I'm serious.
Right.
If enough of that stuff happens, enough of that, the narrative gathers steam of like a 6 panettone is really a 10, and enough of those, sort of imitators eat your lunch and you can no longer do what you do.
It changes.
We don't get to eat our food anymore.
Not only that, I do think it changes the scholarship, and it's not me, shaking my fist at the sky here. It's not. I like you care about the Titans, the things that sort of defined everything, and to some degree, like I think quite a bit about when Marco Pierre White quit Harvey's, because there were a variety of reasons, but one of the bigger ones was like, I don't want to be judged by people that know less about the shit than I do, and that's my great concern is. How do we know and how do we actually teach what excellence is when you can't do it in food other than hype and social media? Ultimately, we need scholarship. Ultimately, we need people to judge on taste.
Right.
But when we have all of this competition in this field now, then I think we become in an echo chamber of what we think good actually is. And it's harder to teach, I think, that when everyone makes assumption, I know what good is. And you don't want to be condescending, like, no, that's not fucking good.
Right.
But I'm also not trying to say that's fucking bad. This is my conversation I have with Domino's Pizza. Like, I don't fucking hate Domino's. I enjoy Domino's, but it could be the best for me in this specific time.
Right. It's your truth.
But pizza scholarship is there. It's easy because we have a lot of pizza scholarship. And it's also one of those things where you actually have to do your 10,000 hours to be fucking great at it on a fucking artisanal level.
Right.
I'm worried about the people that have committed their life towards really trying to sell the best of the best of the best. And are we going to have that moving forward, or is it a lost art in and of itself to actually try to do what you're doing?
I'm pretty convinced that if, let's say, amongst professionals, there will never be an absence of space for those of us that genuinely want to dedicate our lives to elite excellence. And I mean that, like, I don't mean Joe Schmo at home thinking that what he likes is elite. I mean, what you and I would probably agree is, in whatever arena, whether it's a soba noodle master or someone making panettone or someone dedicating their lives to, opening the finest, most elite restaurants, whatever, there will always be space for that. And more times than not, the people that live in those arenas don't really pay attention to the noise outside. Why? We don't require millions of customers. We just don't. The reason Birkin can sell at the prices that they sell, they don't produce 1 million Birkin bags. If they needed to produce 1 million Birkin bags, it wouldn't be a Birkin bag, right? And so, yes, there are companies that sell many, many more bags for $2,000 a pop and not 30 grand a pop, right? But it's a different thing. And Hermes is not fixated on, how can we sell 1 million Birkin? It changes it, right? And so the idea that, generally speaking, yes, there's going to be people that don't really have an insight into what a 10 really, really is. I don't know that that's a new thing. I just think it's more in our face than it than it ever has been.
That's probably true,
right?
Yeah.
I don't think it's new. I think it's always been there, right? It's just
but the thing is, like, you are open to the idea that there's another seafood, there's another master, there's another door
Completely.
of, like, I have no fucking idea, but I'm open to the idea of get my mind totally rocked because this is a new, better fucking way of doing it. I think if there is a concern for me, it's not to disagree. There's always going to be a level of excellence, but it's harder to dream that is possible.
Yes.
Right? Where now I feel like the ceiling is being lowered a little bit. Like, just
absolutely,
I've reached great. This is the last door. I don't need to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Let's just scale this, because you can't make, 200,000 panettone a day.
No.
Not possible.
It's absolutely
because
impossible.
at a level, excellence cannot be scaled.
That's right.
And that's ultimately the moral I'm trying to say is, like, at what point do you make the decision to be like, that's as far as I can take it?
Yeah. From a business perspective, I'm not, I don't even think I'm at the tip of the iceberg yet. And, it's been 9 years of us being in business, and, we went from making, X number the first holiday. And if you'd have told me that I would have graduated to a point where we're now, doing 800 or so panettone a day. I remember when I was in Italy observing Massari, and they were doing, at that time, 700. And I remember seeing that, and I'm like, oh my God, if one day ever I could make this volume in one day, that would be beyond my ability to comprehend. And fast forward, here I am. And what I do know now is with the right puzzle pieces in place, I could produce the quality that I produce at more than 800 a day, not 200,000, obviously, but certainly more than 800. Where is that line? I'm not sure. Considerably less than 200,000 a day, but more than
world would be awesome.
more than 800 a day, right?
On this question of sort of like, how do you know something is great? How do you know there's quality? Like, how the average person is lacking in this ability to identify it. Let me be totally honest and fess up here. The panettones I've eaten in my life are pretty limited to the ones my mom bought and this one. And maybe a few in between, like I said, that people have brought me.
Right, yeah.
I know yours is light years ahead of all of those, but I'm basing my, like, this is the best panettone on my experience of it being exceptionally, insanely delicious, based on my friends like Dave being like, this is fucking incredible. And then people like you, like other Europeans who've tasted, being like, this is incredible. This is really legit. Yeah. But my education's actually super limited. Yeah. I'm declaring yours a 10. I'm maybe guilty of the same shit everybody else is, because maybe that's a 7 and there's like a 10 out there. How did you get to a point where you're like, this is good, this is better, this is great? And how many times were you hit with like, oh shit, there's another door, there's another level, there's another.
So it's hard for me to separate my answer from the fact that I think probably like you, David, like I'm a trained chef, right? So I can't disconnect from knowing that to a degree that's probably not accessible to the average person, I have a more trained palate, right? But I don't think it even needs to be that complicated. We all know when we put something in our mouth, okay, this is fucking delicious. Like, I can't explain why or who made it, like, but this is like nothing. This is just different, right? And sometimes things are that
You mean
simple.
You didn't read a list somewhere that said like 1 through 10?
Sometimes things are that simple. I can't tell you how many emails we've gotten over the years from people that received it as a gift, right? Don't even know how to pronounce the word. Don't know where it comes from. Don't know who I am. Just got to the website and like, just wanted you to know.
They're like, you're Roy?
Just wanted you to know I got this gift. I live in Arkansas, right? My wife and I opened this. We just thought it was a big muffin, right? Thousands of emails like that saying, we put this in our mouth and I can't even explain to you how delicious.
Best muffin I've ever had.
Yes. and that, for me, that is the ultimate compliment because I've said it from day one. You don't need to understand this. I'm in the business of delicious.
Well,
that's it.
I'm so glad we're, again, talking about excellence and what people perceive, because I had a healthy debate with a friend of ours that listens to the podcast that we were doing with Josh, and I just don't want to come across as condescending, that a potential diner doesn't know what good actually is. I don't mean that in a negative way at all.
Yes.
I don't know how
parameters.
There's parameters. I don't want people to think when they go to a restaurant, they're getting necessarily something bad if they're doing 150 covers or 200 covers.
Right.
It's just a different calculus. But they should know that a restaurant that gets its own fucking, like, everything bespoke, their own cows, they're churning their own butter, to some degree, it's going to taste different because it's a level of excellence and quality that you can't really compare it to anything else.
Right. I think here's what works against us as people in the food industry, and I think it's unique. I can't think of another arena where it's like this. So I think because as humans, we all have to eat. Some of us actually cook at home, and because it's a default necessity to be alive, we then assume because we eat and because we cook at home. I don't mean we chefs, but normal people, that you now have earned the right to have an opinion and have an objective analysis. Now, the analog would be none of us sit here and debate physicians or law firms or art. Like, we don't know. Why don't we know? We don't do this for a living. But the logic is the same. You also don't cook for a living. It's just that you have to eat to be alive. You could very well have eaten horrible food your whole life, but you didn't have a choice, but you don't know that it's horrible.
Right.
I mean, there's a story we bring up quite a bit, like the hedonistic bump. It's by Pat Nurse, the great food editor, friend of ours in Australia. And he was saying that his dad grew up in like Canberra, or one of the cities. And they had one bakery there, small town. And he didn't know what was happening when he went to university, his dad, because they would serve bread and everyone was like, there's something wrong with this bread. And they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's perfect. It's perfect. He grew up because their local baker actually was burning their bread all the time. So the entire town thought bread was supposed to be burned to a certain degree, bitter.
Sure.
And it was like, it's a simple story. And I think that's sort of what I'm trying to flesh out. There's no right or wrong answer, but I think we need to have a larger conversation of what good is. It is not black or white. There are certainly...
It's all gray.
It's all gray.
This is interesting. Yeah. I was talking to Josh Skeens about this after the podcast too, and it was like the difference between like the audience at a 3 Michelin star restaurant and you're in like anything below that, really in the middle, is nobody, like people walking into the 3-star restaurant, or I was talking to Josh at like Saison. It's like they are not only willing, but they are sort of eager to be proven wrong about what they think is great, right? They want to be shown something completely new, a new level of things. Like, I want to be wrong. I want to be like, oh my God, I have been eating this thinking that was good the whole time. And like now I'm experiencing like the highest level. Like, I was wrong. This is great. When you walk into your pizza shop, you walk into whatever, you're walking in definitely not hoping to be proven wrong. You are hoping to have your biases and beliefs confirmed with something that is being served to you that you find delicious, right? Like that's really, I think it's like that's the challenge.
And I think that's a great way to describe it, with just the general mindset people have when they walk into Saison or French Laundry, whatever, Benu, whatever it is. You're, even before you walk in, when you made the reservation, you've already mentally prepared for kind of the energy space that you're going to be in when you go there. It is different than when you have your reservation to go eat at Balthazar. Right?
Yeah.
It's not the same, right? And you know, that leap from going just to, you know, let's have a fun night out at Balthazar, let's get some oysters, let's get some mussels, you know, whatever. That's different than if you know Skeens is going to be cooking for you for 3 or 4 hours.
You know this because I have to say that it's the scholarship, it's the common held assumptions about eating that us as food losers and nerds know, and everyone else is like, I don't give a fuck, and they're not wrong. They're probably more right than we are.
Right.
They're definitely not wrong, but it is occurring to me, like, I'm thinking about you, Dave. I've never thought about this, but the way you eat. You love being proven wrong wherever. That's like your favorite moment of eating, really. Like deliciousness, yes, but even down to because I sit in front of him and watch him cook an ungodly amount of time every week. And your reaction when something is good is not a like satisfied look. It is your eyes get big and you were surprised.
Yeah, because I think perpetually everything, including the shit I'm going to make, is going to suck.
Right.
You know, I have to.
But like being proven wrong is your default mindset going into eating. Like that's what you're looking for.
We're addicts. I'm constantly looking for like, oh, that's fucking better. Or I'm not thinking about it the same way anymore. And ultimately, this is where I wanted to get with you, Roy. Your commitment to not just technique and sort of the history of it is a wholly different level, right? But also what's a different level is your commitment towards product. And I always bring this up is I think Ducasse, whether you know about him, which honestly a younger generation probably knows very little about him, but I think if you could take away one of his fundamental approaches to cuisine was trying to procure the most bespoke, best ingredient humanly possible. Yes. That's really what defined him, in my opinion, besides the ambiance and everything. For Ducasse to be like, you know what? Let's do shit together. That is like, I don't know if people understand. It's like, that would be like a, you know, LVMH being like, let's do
top
shit
3
together.
On my personal like list.
It's like you just got the AOC stamp of approval. Yes. You're like, you know what fucking good is.
Yeah. That was a moment.
That's and I know you don't have to fucking tell me that. I know that. Was a moment. You know what I mean? Like, but like, I don't think a food journalist knows that. Like that is like, this motherfucker is doing shit.
His entire brand is predicated on
quality, elite,
excellence, quality, and you know he doesn't have to put his name next to it.
But I know this. Right. But how do we, and it behooves you to get a larger audience to know that there are certain markers of like, yeah, it's not just about a star, it's not just about X. It's like for this level of what he's trying to do here for this product, the panettone, which is ultimately like your black label, is the best of the best of the best. It's the most exclusive X, Y, and Z. I just don't know if we're ever going to get to that point. And it makes me sort of bummed out.
Yeah, I mean,
because it'd be so much easier for you too, right?
Here's a question. Would in a perfect world, would you want the mass populace to understand the Ducasse nature of his life and what he dedicated himself to?
Of course.
You would.
I would. That to me is what it is. That's what I mean by scholarship. And I see that done at a large scale. It can't happen on a country.
Sure.
Japan.
Yes.
Happens to certain regions of France and Europe. You know.
So here's a question about Japan. It's interesting you mentioned that. Does the construction worker in Japan understand sushi sato the way you do? Maybe not the way you do technically, but the aura.
I think they do.
Yeah.
I really do.
I don't know the answer to that. I'm asking.
I've talked to enough of these guys, not all of them, but like if they didn't, they wouldn't keep a seat available. And when I see a seat, like literally one seat available, or 2 seats, for I would say, quote unquote, the average Joe or Jay.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like they know, like that is.
So I have very distinct memories, which I remember just shocked me when I lived in Paris and I lived in Spain, that the average person, although maybe having never been to a 3-star restaurant, was certainly aware of what arpege was, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely aware, knowing they may never go.
Because it's like rooting for a football soccer team. You know, it's like part of their, and I think right now, I mean, when I say discrepancy, what I feel like we skipped that moment of history where we've gone through that entire process of learning. And now it's just like these table holders, place settings of what excellence in food actually is without an audience actually knowing what or how we even got there.
Right.
I think we need to know some of the history. It is imperative that we know how the fuck we got here, why people eat your food. And they're like, why is this so fucking good? I'm like,
storytelling.
Your resume. Pierre Aimé, Ferran Adrià, Keller, Boulet, Alain Ducasse, and Massari. Like, if I'm a younger cook, probably I've learned one or two of those who those chefs are.
Right.
That's unacceptable.
I agree with
That's what I'm trying to say. Is like, our scholarship in this business has not kept up with the Joneses and everything else. If you were a fucking physicist, you'd be like, yeah, you work for Niels Bohr, Dick Feynman, Albert Einstein, Murray Gell-Mann. I'm like, what?
Right. Yeah.
And like, again, the scholarship is built into like, you better know who these fucking people were.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean is like, as a cuisine, as a culture, food culture, we've somehow bypassed all that.
Yeah.
And because it's just now a known, like I don't have to question it. It is a given. It is a known. And that's the best. And I don't need to know anything about it.
Right.
That's what people buy. It's expensive. And that's what I want. I see this with fucking wine. You have all these fucking, I won't say dum-dums, but like people with money are buying fucking wine that they have no idea. And they're buying whole boxes of shit that people are just trying to unload.
Yeah.
Too. You know, it's actually good. It's like a clearing of inventory in a way. But I beside the point, I'm just like, my concern ultimately is, I think it's a larger, serious one, is I think we need to like go backwards a little bit.
Yeah.
Scholarship.
I think platforms like yours, and I have a decent. I think storytelling is something that first of all takes time, right? And we do live in a time and space where, to varying degrees, and certainly the generation younger than us and younger than them, everything needs to be instant, right? And in my opinion, that cultivating that sort of culture and mentality has such toxic ramifications that don't just apply to how we think about, products, but it permeates everything. Now, storytelling in very real platforms like yours and mine and many of our colleagues is we all have to be vested in the idea that this might take a decade of storytelling.
Yeah.
Right?
It's
and you have to be relentless about it because, I think there's with my product specifically, right? I have almost an inverse problem than most entrepreneurs, right? Our energy spend, I can be transparent about it. Like, we don't really have to worry about repeat customers. My repeat customer rate is, I hate to say, as close to 100% as you could humanly wrap your head around, right? Short of some exceptions. Our issue is, I just need you to try this
one time.
Yeah. And you will come back.
I think it's interesting what he's saying, though,
he is Pokemon.
He is Pokemon. He is the Pokemon. He is the Pokemaster. No, we're young. I mean, Dave, like the culture.
You're younger than us.
The culture.
I love hearing that.
Not we. Young. No, you guys old. No,
you're young.
American food culture is young.
Super.
We're very young. And I'm thinking about basketball too, right? Like the rest of the world 20 years ago, look at the most recent Olympics. The rest of the world, if you see like the basketball culture outside of America was so far behind, right? But it has caught up. It is, and
I would say we're running the risk ourselves of being
falling behind. And so I agree with you. It does have to do with sort of education. It is frustrating as hell because people, I'm just as frustrated as Dave. It's like people think they're like running before they can walk, right? That's like the whole thing. But to the point of like just education and the platform, like I do think you should just talk about, like, you should just like open this and like talk about what the hell makes this better.
At some point too, just all of this is much ado about nothing, right? At the end of the day, it's tasting it and knowing it's good. Again, because of this excellence, it's created a whole cottage industry of now something that we can use as to extrapolate all these other topics that are comps, in food. It could be panettone. This could be best pizza. X, Y is like best fried chicken. And I think it's good that we're having the debate, but we're just not
I mean, you mentioned pizza, and I love his feed, Dave Portnoy, with right, like what started as like, hey, I'm just gonna video my opinion about pizza, cool, and look what it turned into. Right now, is he a pizza expert? I don't know. Right, like I've never eaten with the guy. I don't know what there's places that I think he should visit or has visited, and I don't agree with his assessment. I'm not even claiming he's wrong or that I'm right. I'm just saying.
Great example, because I actually find it to be entertaining, but there are times when he's gone to a pizza shop and he's totally missed the fucking boat.
I agree with you.
Right? Totally missed the fucking boat. Some of them are our friends, and I'm like, now you've just dumbed down our understanding of what excellence actually is. Because now everyone's singing it's got to be this kind of pizza, which is good. That's a concern to me.
Right.
Where doing something great is now lost.
Yes, like a lot of the ones that he rates, and again, I love his feed. I even like him, right? I haven't met the guy, right? But there are times where he's given out 8.8s, 9.1s, and I'm like, I know how terrible that dough is, right? Like and as a dough guy, I'm like, if your dough is terrible, even if everything else is even very good, right? You can't be excellent. You just can't. Now, I can distinguish that from you prefer this, you like it, right? I know people that absolutely prefer over any $30 hamburger you can get them, a quarter pounder with cheese. You're not wrong. It's just your preference, right? And so to distinguish what someone's individual preferences versus an objective analysis over what is actually great, I think are very different arenas that often get very jumbled together.
But this is the story of art, music, film through time, right? Like underappreciated, underrated, overrated, like throughout time, and like hopefully art triumphs at the end.
It's the barbershop talk, right? Like we all love debating sports. We talk about sports, right? Right, wrong. Like it's not the point. The point is we have conversation.
Again, I think it's to have an open conversation about it is good. To be 100%. Open that the next thing I might try might knock me on my ass and is better than anything I've ever had is great. I don't know if we're continuing to have that sort of, how do we nurture that questioning more? How, Chris? How?
Well, I literally think right here, this is a video podcast and we have the equivalent of Chekhov's gun sitting in the corner. If you don't open this fucking box and like show us what quality looks
What's
like.
in the box?
What's in the box?
We also get a lot of emails of people saying, look, I know you do your whole thing where you slice it on Instagram and it's all nice and neat and clean. Don't judge me, but I like to rip my hands into it and just rip a piece.
I like to eat it with my hands around my back, tied around my back.
First of all, the height. Your average store-bought panettone is probably a third of that height.
Chris, let me ask you something. Does the size really matter?
It fucking does with a panettone, my friend.
Yeah, so in fairness, there are different sizes and shapes to panettone. I'm not here to say which one is the best. They are very
okay. We have a little chocolate hazelnut here today.
That is.
Yeah. We're not even gonna get there, but how do you judge the quality on something when you taste something, right? Or chocolate, for example. Why did you choose the chocolate in this versus chocolate in a different category?
So it's interesting, right? Even with that, there was a journey because when I first started being a guy that came from the pastry world of multi-Michelin starred restaurants, Valrhona was, the holy grail of if you're using the best chocolate, whatever the best means, right, it has to be Valrhona. And when I started this, by default, like, okay, Valrhona. And there was a day where my order didn't show up and the place that I was working happened to have Guittard, right? I think also makes very good chocolate. I'm like, okay, no choice. I'm going to use Guittard. And it was a learning moment for me. The learning moment was chocolate that I'm putting in a baked good has a different criteria than one, for example, that I want to eat out of hand that never has heat applied to it, or one that I want to enrobe a bonbon with, right? So depending on application, by the way, and then I realized the next day when I tasted, I'm like, it's pretty damn delicious. And it's half the cost, if not less. And so, it kind of changed my thinking on product as it connects to application. And so if I was making a line of From Roy bonbons, would I have sure. But for my panettone being a baked good, something that's in the oven for an hour, along with flour, sugar, water, egg yolks, like all these things, I'm
just so delighted by the phrase "enrobe a bonbon." Really just tourists like, okay, just tear in there, but like I want to understand. I want you to like describe what a good panettone is and like what is hopefully inside of this that we're looking for here.
Oh man, I feel so bad.
Don't.
It does feel like
Dave, just rip it.
No, I can't. This is so wrong. It feels like taking a exotic supercar.
It does feel it hurts a little bit to see this happening. But it's
Dave, just so you know, my team of bakers is probably hiding under their bed right now.
All right, do your QC on, like, I love watching you do your quality checks, but like from the outside, what are we looking at? What do you see?
So from the outside, you know, the
what a crazy way to do it.
It's actually a cool little, let me take a look at this.
It's very open and irregular in the center.
I can't believe I just opened it this way. I feel so fucking weird.
He took the top
But
off
Dave,
of
you
this
got
thing.
permission.
I know.
You did get permission.
I feel so gross.
It does feel like you've just defiled this thing completely.
Let me taste how gross it is.
Just to make sure you remember.
I mean,
It's on, like, texturally, it's insane.
it's one of the best things you'll ever. It is.
Yeah, so the analysis for me, of course, begins from the outside, right? The general volume, right? Like there are many times in my life where something might be great on the inside, but if the volume that I look for isn't achieved, I'm not sending it out, right? And it's funny, when we get new bakers every season, the thing that shocks them the most, other than like the intensity with which the holiday season is, what shocks them the most is the panettone that on a given day, I'm like, we can't sell that. And they'll look at me and like, wait, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, I can't send that out. And they'll say something that resembles this. Roy, you're aware that like every bakery in America would be proud to sell that. I'm like, I am aware. That's just not, it's not part of my kind of deductive, should I send this, should I not? Because I've set a precedent.
You know what the baker's thing? Can I take it home?
Yeah, exactly.
No, yeah.
Can I sell it somewhere?
And so we even have like an internal thing about taking product that I'm not willing to sell. When you take it out of the building, right? You can't like gift it to someone and be like, oh, this is from Roy.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
No,
of course.
You have to be very clear, like this did not make the cut.
This is from Steve.
Right? This is from Dave. Right?
It's just stunning and how fucking good it is.
It's like light and airy, but also
Rich.
Right.
Insanely.
It's like that's the whole thing that defies the sort of pastry physics is how much fat and sugar is in here and how
it
much
still feels
lift
light.
it is, how light it feels. I mean, physically, it's like heavy.
Right.
Physically heavy, but not dense, I think is what it is.
Right.
Like,
That's a
it's
fair.
fucking crazy.
It's balanced. It's everything you want. Texture,
Like,
hard, crunchy, everything.
Crunchy on the outside, the little sugar.
It's a perfect bite of food.
It's unbelievable.
It's still even, 20 years into doing this, and I don't allow myself to do this often, but sometimes I will allow myself to go into, let's say, an evening where I'm treating myself to eating this, and I realize when I'm done, I was like, did I just eat half a panettone in an hour? But I don't feel like I want to vomit.
Yeah.
And that's still 20 years in, still like makes me like, that's what makes this.
Do you fuck around with this at all? Do you just eat it straight up, or do you ever?
So my favorite way I can eat it like this, but I think my ultimate indulgence is to cut a thick wedge, turn on my broiler, broil it for like 90 seconds, where that top layer gets.
I don't want to eat this, but I am.
Dave is just.
And you're not even stoned.
Dave has just left the podcast.
Maybe not true. I mean,
Maybe not.
Broiler and then just toasty.
Yeah, that top layer gets nice and toasty.
Hell yeah.
The chocolate bits kind of re-warm. And so there's that added textural component from the broiler. Like if I had a restaurant, like I would put that on a plate, like a thick piece like this.
Yeah.
Right? And
Like a quarter of a panettone.
panettone for two, right? At a restaurant.
I mean, the best way I can describe this problem.
It is a problem.
When you open it up, you actually need to like hide it from yourself.
You need to be ready.
Because it's a full frontal assault on your willpower. Here's the thing. If you guys weren't here, camera wasn't on, shirts off. That's how he's thinking. This guy eats chicken without a shirt on. That was an inside joke for Chris. But I mean, it would be like, I would have like a real love. Like I would have a lot of highs and lows, not from the sugar. The highs would be like, oh, man, like I feel so bad. Like here's the problem. This is part of the unfortunate marketing of this panettone from Roy is you're going to feel really have somewhat low self-esteem when you're done, when you realize you succumb to the whole fucking thing.
Here's the best sales pitch I can offer you on this panettone. Before you open this, we were having like a very heady philosophical conversation about the nature of quality and education, getting technical about it. We have just descended into just like
that's what I say.
Who gives a shit?
There are some things where you don't have to it's just delicious, right? You don't have to understand.
You gotta eat the evidence.
It has just turned us into fucking
my
animals,
career. It doesn't matter. Right? The goal is just I make something delicious. Hopefully you like it and you'll come back.
So flavors this season,
7 of them.
What do we got?
So
fucking get this away from me.
Of course, we have our all-time best-selling chocolate panettone, which Dave's eating right now. We have the classic candied orange raisin. For Thanksgiving, we're doing my favorite pie, by the way, is apple pie. Mm-hmm. So we're doing an apple pie-inspired panettone, pumpkin maple pecan, which is only available for Thanksgiving. We're also doing pistachio cherry, lemon poppy, a tiramisu, and a banana chocolate caramel.
Good God.
That pistachio
cherry.
No,
the puree.
The puree.
Oh, the crema.
The crema.
That's coming back.
Dude.
That's coming back.
It just
that's the next product category.
I've never tried some illicit drugs that cause people to become immediate addicts.
Ever.
Not like that. Not like that to me. That to me, I literally put again in a category of like, whew.
Yeah.
Shows Dave, this is what's going to happen to you.
I actually think it should be illegal. I think it should
it's too good.
Smearing that. So I
want to put it all over my body.
I don't want to be reductive.
While he's eating chicken wings.
It is what it's like. It's for anybody who has no idea. It's Nutella, but pistachio.
Right. I mean, that's
some respect on it.
I'm saying for people who don't know what it is.
No, yeah, it's my, my version of, I like to say, spreadable confections, right? Yes, there is Nutella.
This is infinitely better.
But here's the deal: like, what are you spreading it on other than your fucking mouth?
I know. It's just like
a thick toasted slice of panettone.
No. That I've done onto panettone. I think should be illegal. It should not be allowed.
I mean, I don't know if this is a commercial for you, but I don't feel good about myself. Not because I feel bad about, that it's like, I'm like gluten intolerant. Even if I was, I feel bad because I couldn't stop myself to the one ring that rules them all.
Are you seeing your therapist the next day?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course. Like, look, I did something last night.
The anger I have at myself for just not stopping.
So pick up your From Roy panettone this season. It'll make you feel horrible about yourself in a good way.
You'll have extra sessions with your therapist.
Yeah,
for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I want to eat. Roy, thanks for coming on, man.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That was our conversation with Roy. Went on a little bit longer. We're trying to keep these podcasts to around 45 minutes to an hour. So our little moif will have to be moved to another day. But wanted to let you guys all know that the panettone that is in front of me right now from Roy, if you've been listening, there's a code.
Chang 2024.
Chang 2024. Very original. Go to...
This is from Roy.com.
This is from Roy.com and get your Christmas presents out as well. I don't know exactly how much the code is for, but you'll find out when you buy this. All right. Give us 5 stars.